Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Ethan of Athos, chapters 3 and 4. In these chapters, poor old Ethan, he gets gripped up for some shit that he isn't even involved in. And the only thing worse than being tortured for shit that you're involved in is being tortured for shit that you're not involved in. This poor dude. Jesus Christ. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Jeff for commissioning this episode. Jeff is here in the chat. What's up, Jeff? So, yeah, you guys, this was just, look, Ethan's a dodo bird in a little bit of a way. He's just really naive. Dodo bird is overstating. It's not fair. Your boy has been taught what he has been taught. And also, he's a little bit of a goody two-shoes, which I can respect, as I can also be that way. And I just hated this for him as, like, his first experience after, like, leaving his planet. And I was relieved to find out that, what is her name, Elli? Or Elle? We'll get there in a moment, but she is the one who planted something on him to make them think that he was part of this whole operation that they are trying to find out information about. And I will be honest, guys, I actually was a little bit worried that he had been set up by one of his own people. So there is a part of me that is sort of relieved to find out that is not the case, because I did have a moment of just like, oh, really? Did somebody send him out here, like, knowing that sucks? So, thank God. But let's begin at the beginning, shall we? So, Klein Station was an accretion of 300 years. Even so, Ethan was unprepared for the size of it and the complexity. It straddled a region of space where no less than 6 fruitful jump routes emerged within a reasonable subflight boost of each other. The dark star nearby hosted no planets at all, and so Klein Station rode a slow orbit far out of its gravity well, cresting the Stygian cold. Klein Station had been full of history even when Athos was first settled. They say Athos in the audiobook. I like Athos. I just think it sounds better, so I'm just going to say Athos. I hope that, this isn't, like, offensive to anybody's sensibilities about this book. It had been the jumping-off point for the Founding Fathers' noble experiment. A poor fortress, but a great place to do business, it had changed hands a number of times as one or another of its neighbors sought it as a guardian of its gates, not to mention a source of cash flow. Presently, it maintained a precarious political independence based on bribery, determination, suppleness in business practice, and stiffness in internal loyalty bordering on patriotism. 100,000 citizens lived in its mazy branches, augmented at peak periods of traffic by perhaps a fifth as many transients. Do you guys know that it never entered my mind that people live at these stations? Because I just, in my brain, do a, like, 1-to-1 ratio of, yeah. Well, these stations are basically like airports, and people don't live at airports, so, like, that is how simple it is in my poor little brain sometimes. No, they don't live at airports, Natasha, because you're on a planet in an airport. Not to mention, there's air outside of an airport. But I just didn't stop and think about it. I definitely saw this location as just like a place that you are going to work. That this is like a location that you know what I'm saying? That you, like, what's the word? Commute to. So anyway, I just couldn't, I had to share that because I felt like such a ding dong. Um, so the crew of 8 was all male, not Ethan found out of regular rule or respect for the laws of Athos, but from the disinclination of female employees of the Bureau to spend 4 months on the round trip voyage without a downside leave. It gave Ethan a little breather before being plunged into galactic culture. So he calls women in this at this point uterine replicators with legs. He was not sure if they were supposed to be inciters to sin, or sin was inherent in them like juice in an orange, or sin was caught from them like a virus. He should have paid more attention during his boyhood religious instruction, not that the subject had ever been anything but mysteriously talked around. And yet, when he'd read one journal edited of names as a scientific test, he'd found the articles indistinguishable as to the sex of the author. This made no sense. Maybe it was only their souls, not their brains, that were so different. The one article he'd been sure was a man's work turned out to be by a Baton hermaphrodite, a sex which hadn't even existed when the founding fathers had fled to Athos, and where did they fit in? He lost himself for a while, imagining the flap in Athosian customs should such a creature present itself for entry, as the bureaucrats tried to decide whether to admit its maleness or exclude its femaleness. It would probably be referred to a committee for about a century, by which time the hermaphrodite would have conveniently solved the problem by dying of old age. Something about this, especially in like our current climate of just like such increased intolerance of trans individuals. And I say increased not because the tolerance is actually decreased, but because trans people are under a microscope in a way that I don't feel like they have been. The idea of this like just being kind of like I don't know what to do with them. They don't fall in the. And it's just so funny because like everybody just wants to insist that gender is binary, but then shit pops up that they can't quantify or address, and all of a sudden they don't know what to do, and it's like if it's such a fucking binary, this shouldn't be an issue for you. But apparently it's not, because now you don't know what the fuck to do. So, surprise, but probably things are a little bit more complicated with gender than you like to pretend that they are. Just saying. So, this and just all of this, like, I wanted. I don't remember how much it touched on this in the last recording, but something that I really appreciated about the fact that like, the first view that he gets of women in that photo that's like part of the, you know, censored section of the documents that they get with that delivery. I feel like if we were going to be writing this in a way that would be much more sort of like male gazy, I feel like what we'd have happen is Bro would see women for the first time, and it would be an extremely beautiful woman, and the reaction that he would have would be instantaneous and involuntary. And then it would just be like, oh my God, I'm overcome by this desire I didn't know that I had. And it's so much fun for not only the first women he sees to be much older and not just some like pinup girl type, so that they are much more humanized out of the gate. But also the fact that when he does see a woman who is apparently considered beautiful by straight men, he seems to have no reaction to her. I really like it because, I think it really brings up a lot of questions about the way that sexuality can work, and the concept of like nature versus nurture is always in the air when it comes to homosexuality or pansexuality, whatever you want to call it. Just being queer. And the idea that like he is from a planet where being gay is so expected that I don't know how many of these men would be attracted to a woman the first time they saw one because they've never seen one. And so, like, it would just be like she was so alien. It's not like women are these forbidden objects of lust. They are, like, not really people in a way that is very different than, like, misogyny, in which women aren't people, but they are to be used by men for pleasure. This is women are not people and are not for pleasure. They are for nothing. Hence the uterine replicators thing. And I wonder how many men on Athos would actually be attracted to women or would just be like, nah, I'm good. What I got going on is what I got going on. I don't need anything else. I'm not interested in anything else, because men so often treat like the attraction to women as this inherent biological urge. And I am really not sure that it is as inherent as they think because we get taught a lot about what is attractive and what is not attractive that we don't realize we're being taught as we are from children. And it's really funny to like especially young women because I think that we are so aware of what we are expected to look like. Especially women around my age in their 40s, you could probably like look back at photos of the ideal body type back when we were teenagers. And this was like the body type that we were aspiring to a lot of the time, that we were told was the most attractive, that we wish we looked like. And then ask girls today what the ideal body type that they aspire to look like is. And they would bear very little resemblance to each other because I remember what I used to strive to look like. And it was like a Cameron Diaz hipless, straight-sided, boyish look. And nowadays, BBLs are just finally starting to fall a little bit out of fashion. But like the ultimate hourglass shape is what has been so popular. And if that had been in style when I was in school, I would have been fucking set. I would have been, like that was the body type I had. But at the time, I thought I was fat because I was comparing myself to a really slender, athletic build. And to think how much my brain has changed in what I find to be attractive versus not. If I see photos of women that I used to want to look like when I was younger, now I am genuinely horrified at myself that I was attempting to look at like that because it was so clearly unhealthy. Like, take a Kate Moss, for example, who, just looks like this due to an extreme eating disorder by admission. And yet, at the time, this was the look we were going for. And all this to say, attraction is not an inherent thing that happens only on a biological level. So much of it is taught and learned in a very particular way. And so many types are valued above other types, usually due to racism. And so, there's this like idea in my head that if the men of Athos like met women, that many of them would be enchanted. And then I kind of stopped myself and was like, why do I think that? Because I'm imagining men who have been around women and then are deprived of them, not men who were brought up without women and taught to despise and fear women, which is a very different thing. And they have been taught to survive sexually without women and to go to men for their sexual needs and see that as the ideal. And it turns out there is a lot less tolerance for that than I was expecting. We get a lot of use in these chapters of the F slur, which I think I have said outside once in my life. I've said out loud, like, because a friend of mine was like, you can say it. And I was like, he was gay. And he was like, it's not like, I say it because I'm trying to like reclaim it. So go ahead, you can call me blank. And I was like, I'm not going to call you blank. And that was the only time that I've ever said it out loud because it's always made me so uncomfortable. So I just want you all to know that I am never going to be using it while I quote the book. I am just going to be saying F slur instead, and you guys can get what it is because I don't like to say it. It just feels, it's like the N word. I don't, I don't need to. This is something that when I was covering The Wire with Rashawn years and years ago, I was really unsure what to do because the N word is used so much in that show. And I would want to quote things directly, but then I was like, I don't feel like I should quote directly. Um, so anyway, he goes up to somebody and he starts to say, sir, but then he realizes, like, wait, this is a woman. Oh, God. You must be the Athosian, she chuckled. She didn't look like the middle-aged scientist portrayed in the Baton Journal. It was a perfectly natural mistake, surely. He had resolved earlier to avoid speaking to women as much as humanly possible, and here he was already. How do I get out of here? He mumbled, darting cornered glances around the docking bay. Didn't they give you a map? Ethan shook his head nervously. Why, that's practically criminal, turning a stranger loose in Klein Station without a map. You could go out looking for the commode and starve to death before you find your way back. So she calls over this guy, Dom, who at first is like irritated, and then he spots her and is like, oh shit, what does she want? And it's clear she looks fine, does not recognize her. And she has to say, the regen didn't change my face that much. I'm Elli. And I am proud to say that I actually remembered who this was from that line. And then when she goes on to explain to him what happened to her, I was like, yes, oh my God, I can't believe that I actually retained her name. So yeah, she has had her face rebuilt after the, plasma ray to the face. Um, and he says, didn't you start out with Admiral Oser's group? That's still his uniform, isn't it? Allow me to introduce myself. Commander Elli Quinn, Dendari Free Mercenary Fleet at your service. The Dendari sort of annexed Oser and his uniforms, and me, and it's been a step up in the world, let me tell you. But I, sir, have home leave for the first time in 10 years, and I intend to enjoy it. So then she mentions you turn this guy loose without a map, and he says, that wasn't intended as a pun, was it? I've been on this run for 4 years, and I'm so damn tired of coming back to a lot of half-witted, bend-over jokes. The secret of your abandonment revealed, Athosian. Should I take him in hand, then, being by virtue of my sex innocent of the suspicion of unnatural lusts? For all of me, you can. I have a wife to get home to. He walked pointedly around Ethan. This is so pitiful. Like, I just really thought at this point, people would just be a little bit more chill about homosexuality. You guys have fucking space travel and shit. And you cannot get past wanting a dick in your ass. Like, literally, what is the problem? Get over it. Oh my God. Anyway, so she she makes a bunch of other jokes about how she's not going to try and convert him, yada yada. And he says that I'm a faithful man to Janos. Would you like to see a picture? And she's like, yeah, I'm good. I'll take your word for it. And then she's like, am I the first woman you've met? And eventually sort of seems to sadden a little bit and is like, okay, I can see that I'm definitely like freaking you out a little bit. I'm sorry. Um, You want to be here in the branch called Transients Lounge. Nice facilities. You can get a room. Actually, you can get most anything, but I fancy you prefer the staid end of things. Up this ramp, take the second cross corridor. Know how to operate this thing? Good luck. She pressed the map module into his hand, flashed a last smile, and vanished into another exit. He gathered his meager belongings and found his way to the transients area eventually, after only a few wrong turns. He passed many more women en route, infesting the corridors, the bubble car tubes, the slide walks, and lift tubes and arcades, but thankfully none accosted him. They seemed to be everywhere. One had a helpless infant in her arms. He stifled a heroic impulse to snatch the child out of danger. You guys, the way I fucking cackled that he was going to try and save this child by napping it from its mother, I lost it. What a fucking. And then he's like, well, the baby might be a girl though, so you know what? Fuck it. Oh my God. So he finds a room, uh, and it says, let's see, no less than 4 live human officials on ascending rungs of the station's governing hierarchy helped with exchange rate to be assigned to Ethan's Athosian pounds. They were actually quite kind in computing the most favorable translation of his funds via 2 currencies of which Ethan had never heard into the maximum possible number of Baton dollars. Now, you guys, I have a question. Is this true, or is he just a sweet baby who doesn't know that he's being swindled? Because, like, the 2 currencies of which he had never heard into Baton dollars, it feels very like they did a thing and pulled a fast one, and he just doesn't know any better. There's something so, like, precious and infuriating about this. Um, Still, he ended with what seemed far fewer dollars than he'd had pounds before, and he passed hastily over the proffered imperial suite in favor of an economy cabin. He got, right? Like, he definitely did. Oh, you sweet, innocent little angel. So, he gets to his cabin. It's teeny tiny, and he's like, all right, well, I'm definitely not staying in here. Once I'm asleep, fine. But when there were subsidiary instructions: keep it under budget, get the best, go as far as afield as needed, don't waste money on unnecessary travel. Fortunately, the chairman had spoken to Ethan privately after the committee briefing. Those your notes? Give them to me. And he dropped them into his weebilette. I think is how you say that. Weebilette? Uh, Weebilette? Let's see what this says here. Oubliette, a secret dungeon with access only through a trapdoor in its ceiling. Oubliette. um, so he says, get the stuff and get back, all else is gas. In Transient's lounge, Ethan found the bright face of the tapestry at last by the simple expedient of taking a bubble car through the tubes to the most luxurious passenger dock, turning around, and walking back the other way. Framed in crystal and chrome were sweeping panoramas of the galactic night, of other branches of the station shot with candy-colored lights, of the glittering wheels of the earliest sections turning forever for the sake of their obsolete centrifugal gravities. Not abandoned, nothing was ever wholly abandoned in this society, but some put to less urgent uses, others half dismantled for salvage, that Klein Station might grow like a snake eating its tail. So he is walking around in this, and he is a little bit overwhelmed, just staring at a fountain at one point. A breath away across the transparent barrier, a cold that could turn all to stone in an instant lurked in deathly silence. The artistic contrast was overwhelming, and Ethan was not the only downside or transient who stood transfixed in open wonder. Bordering the parks section were cafes and restaurants where Ethan calculated if he only ate once a week, he might dine, and hostelries where patrons who could afford restaurants 4 times a day dwelt. And theaters, and Feely Dream booths, and an arcade which, according to its directory, offered travelers the solace of some 86 officially established religions. Athos, of course, was not among them. I thought that was interesting. They just are so rarely traveling that they aren't included at all, I'm assuming. Um, Ethan passed what was obviously the funeral procession of some philosophic person who spurned cryogenic storage in favor of microwave cremation. Ethan, eyes still full of the endless dark beyond the trees, though he could understand a preference for fire over ice, and some mysterious ceremony whose principals, a woman wrapped in red silk and a man in spangled blue, were pelted with rice by giggling friends who then tied dozens of strings around the pair's wrists so they're getting married. I really enjoy, like, I was a little bit confused when we started this book at the change in POV. And then I sort of realized that, like, moments like this aren't something that we could get from Miles's POV or really from Cordelia's either. Like, all of this sort of detail is not the kind of stuff that they would bother taking note of or sort of mentally describing to us because they have been there and done that. And I just, this is the sort of stuff that I find like particularly compelling, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. Just really wanting to know some of the everyday stuff and the way that places are built and how they look, and the idea that, like, there are these parks and these incredible restaurants and everything, but then the addition of the way everything is decorated and all of that, like, that is my jam. I love that kind of detail, and I just don't really see it coming from those characters. So I almost wonder if she just decided, like, I want to mix it up a little bit because I feel like I'm going to, you know, I would like to open up this world in a less focused way in terms of the, because, Cordelia, Miles, Vorkosigan himself, they are very focused people. And having been raised the way that he is, Miles has seen a whole lot and is involved in things that are like high enough level that I think he would just, things would sort of pass over him and he might not even notice. And Cordelia, after everything that she has been through, like, what is going to get her attention? So anyway, I really, really liked this section. Uh, so he finds the consuls and agencies and yada yada. He peeked into the Baton embassy. Unfortunately, its commercial directory computer interface was manned by what was obviously a female expediter. Ethan withdrew hastily without speaking to her. Perhaps he'd tried later, during another shift. He pointedly ignored the collection of consoles representing the great syndicated houses of Jackson's Hole. Ethan did resolve to send House Baraputra a stiff note of complaint later. What is the deal with wanting to send a complaint about Jackson's Hole? There was a mention about them, like, at some point, and I am not remembering what it was. So if somebody wants to help me out, um, I was trying, because, like, I couldn't tell if it was just the fact that they haven't accommodated with a male, but Jackson's Hole sent them the bad batch of ovaries. Oh, thank you, Sylvan. That's what it was. Um, so yeah, I wonder if he could have, like, I'm wondering, considering what he gets gripped up for questioning, if he would have done himself a service by sending that complaint now, like going in there and being like, I need to talk to somebody. If it would have made them kind of go, okay, this guy can't be who we think, or if it wouldn't have made a difference. Um, so curiosity that grew rather than faded with each new sight and discovery drew him out of Transient's lounge into the stationer's own sections. Here, the decor diminished from staid to utilitarian. The odors from a small cafeteria, tucked between a customized plastics fabricator and a pressure suit repair facility, reminded Ethan suddenly that he hadn't eaten since leaving shipboard, but there were a great many women within. He reversed the impulse and withdrew, feeling very hungry. A random walk led him down two more little tubes into a narrow, rather grubby commercial arcade. So he starts to pass by this like kind of bar, basically, is what's happening here. Um, and there are no women in here whatsoever. And he decides that he is going to attempt to recruit people to move to Athos. And I felt I felt so bad for him because you guys, like, he means so well. He really does. You know, he is just so pure in his desire to do his duty. And I love that. But also the target that he puts on himself so immediately, it's just so infuriating. I was like, bruh, what are you doing? So he goes in there. How do you do? I represent the Bureau of Immigration and Naturalization of the planet Athos. If I may, I'd like to tell you about the pioneering opportunities for settlement still available there. Athos? The planet of the F slurs? You on the level? Can't be. Those guys never stick their noses off their home dirt ball. A third man, all in yellow, said something extremely coarse. The fact that what he says is so awful that it's not typed, considering what is typed, I do not want to know. A crisis has arisen recently in our birth rate. Bet. Let me tell you what you're doing wrong, buddy. The coarse one, from whom alcoholic esters were wafting in high concentration, said something depressingly one track. Green coveralls chortled and patted Ethan familiarly on the stomach. You're in the wrong store, Athosian. Beta Colony's the place to go for a change of sex operation. After that, you can get knocked up in no time. One track repeated himself. Ethan turned to him, his outrage and confusion taking refuge in stiff formality. Sir, you seem to have some sadly narrow preconceptions about my planet. Personal relationships are a matter of individual preference and entirely private. In fact, there are many communes, strict interpreters of the Founding Fathers, who take vows of chastity. They are highly respected. Ugh! That's even worse! Ethan felt his face flush. Excuse me, I am a stranger here. This is the only place I've seen on Klein Station that is free of women, and I thought some reasonable discourse might be possible. It's a very serious... One track made a loud remark in the same vein. Ethan wheeled around and slugged him. You guys, I was taken aback. I never, ever thought Ethan was going to commit violence on anybody. Genuinely never. The fact that he loses it like this, honestly, I was kind of impressed. Like, I couldn't even really be mad about it. It's so unexpected, and they are being such hateful shits that even though I know this is a bad idea, that he is outnumbered, he is not in a good position here, a part of me couldn't help but cheer, you know? And pretty quickly, I got a hold of myself and was like, oh no, this is about to be bad for him. But I won't lie, my instinct initially was just like, yes, get him, Ethan. But it goes quite poorly very quickly because they grip him up, and him saying like there's no women here, they all are just like, oh, so what, you think we're a bunch of F-slurs too? I'll teach you. And this dude like holds him in place and begins to beat the shit out of him. Uh, he has his friends holding him. And like, I was thinking that maybe he would be saved before the beating began, but no. He gets saved like after it's gone on for a little bit. So it could have gone worse, I guess, but it was pretty awful. And finally, he gets interrupted Uh, let's see. When Ellie comes in, here it is. Are you a little worried by the odds? What if he gets loose and gangs up on the six of you? That's enough, I'm thinking. What's this dirt sucker to you, sweetie? Suppose I say I'm his military advisor. F-slur-loving women are worse than the F-slurs themselves. Zed, muttered Blue Coveralls. Can it? She's not a tech, she's a troop. Combat vet, look at her insignia. There was a stir in the back of the room as several neutral observers made prudent exits. All drunks are a pain, but aggressive drunks are just plain disgusting. One track shoved toward her, mouthing confused obscenities. She waited in stillness until he crossed some invisible boundary. There was a sudden buzz and a flash of blue light. Ethan realized as the weapon spun in her hand and melted soundlessly back into its holster that the pause had been for Stunner Nimbus. All others in the group were out of range and untouched. Take a nap. That your friend? You should be more choosy. Friends like that can get you killed. Come on, Pilgrim. Let me take you back to where you belong. I should have said, why? Are you missing yours? Ethan decided that's what I should have said to him. Or maybe... Oh, God the Father. Are those constables? Maybe I should turn myself in. Get it over with. I did assault that man. Not unless you're incubating some rare new plant virus under your fingernails. Those guys are biocontrol, the ecology cops. Bunch of compulsive hand washers. Don't cross them, though. They have unlimited powers of search and seizure. You could find yourself being forcibly deloused with no appeal. I suppose station ecology is much less resilient than planetary. Balanced on a wire between fire and ice. Some places have religion. Here we have safety drills. By the way, if you ever see a patch of frost forming anywhere but a docking bay, report it at once. And when I first read that, what I thought she meant was like, there's some sort of plant that could be very problematic that looks like frost and that you want to let them know because, you know, there's like a potential contamination. And then I realized that she just meant like, that means that there is a breach and that the cold is beginning to get in. And I was like, ooh, something about that is very chilling, pun intended. So she starts to say, hope that little incident doesn't put you off stationers. Let's say I take you to dinner to make up for their bad manners. And he instantly jumps away. I'm not ungrateful, but I have a stomachache. Thank you anyway. There was a lift tube to the next level. This one, the one his hostel was on. Goodbye. He bolted for the tube, leaped in. Reaching upward did nothing to speed his ascent. His last shreds of dignity kept him from flapping his arms. He offered her a strained smile through the crystal sides of the tube as her level fell away in dreamy slowness, distorted, foreshortened, blinked out. If he had just let her take him to dinner, maybe none of this would have happened. But no. So, this is when he is like heading to his room. Poor bruh is so hungry and he gets gripped up here. And I felt so bad because like later on we find out that he gets questioned for like 8 hours and he is just in really bad shape. So he comes awake. His reason flowed like with slow clarity like honey. The rest of him floated in a sweet, languid euphoria. Distantly, under his heart or down in his throat, something whined and cried and scratched frantically like an animal locked in a cellar, but there was no chance of its getting out. His viscous logic noted indifferently that he was bound tightly to a hard plastic chair, and certain muscles in his back and arms and legs burned painfully. So what? Far more intriguing was the man emerging from the bathroom. Gray eyes like granite chips, hard-bodied, average height, much like the fellow who'd picked Ethan off the mall and who even now sat on a nearby float chair. So ordinary in appearance, Ethan could hardly keep him before his mind even when looking directly at him. Ethan wondered how he manufactured red blood cells with his peculiar medical condition of bones containing not marrow, but ice. They were both utterly charming, and Ethan wanted to kiss them. You guys, it was really delightful to get to see Fast Penta from the pented person's POV. Like, I only found out about the Euphoria thing, I think, at the beginning of the book before last. Um, I'm trying to remember because Miles is watching somebody who has been fast pented, and I didn't realize before then that the Euphoria was like part of the thing. And getting to see like how genuinely delightful it feels, and I'm sure it gives you like a wicked headache afterwards. This is the sort of thing that like nothing like this ever comes without a price, right? But it was just very, very funny to see like how genuinely delighted he seems with all the proceedings. And as this goes on and how goofy it is, uh, what is your name? Ethan, what's yours? Your full name and your rank. Master Sergeant Ethan CJB 8 Urquhart Blue Regiment Medical Corps U-20 221767, sir. Retired, he added after a moment. Aren't you a doctor? Oh, yes. Where does it hurt? I hate fast penta, growled Millisor to his colleague. The captain smiled coldly. Yes, but at least you can be sure they're not holding anything back. Are you here to meet Terrence C? Ethan stared back, confused. See Terrence? The only Terrence he knew was one of the rep center techs. They didn't send him, he explained. Who didn't send him? The council. Hell, could he have found himself some new backing so soon after Jackson's Hole? He can't have had time. Tell me everything you know about Terrence C. Dutifully, Ethan began to do so. After a few moments, Millisor, his face reflecting increasing frustration, cut him off with a sharp chop of his hand. Stop. Must have been some other fellow, opined the cold captain. His leader shot him a look of exasperation. So they ask him about the cultures, and he starts to describe what happened there. And they're just like, is he resisting the drugs? They drug him more. And they talk about like, well, it's risky, but you know what? It may be that we just kill him anyway. So, oh well, we'll risk it. Ethan babbled. The room expanded and shrank. Ethan felt as if he were being turned inside out, with his stomach lining exposed to the world and his eyes twisted around and staring at each other. Oh, I love you all, he crooned and retched violently. He came to with his head under the shower. They gave him a different drug, replacing his euphoria with disjointed terror, and badgered him endlessly about Terrence C., the shipment, his mission, together and by turns. Their frustration and hostility mounting, they gave him a drug that vastly increased the firing rate of his sensory nerves and applied instruments to his skin in areas of high nerve density that left no mark but induced incredible agony. He told them everything, anything, whatever they asked. He would gladly have told them what they wanted to hear if only he could have guessed what it was. You guys, this is so saddening. This poor guy, he has no idea what's going on. They are wasting all their time, resources, not to mention the fact that, like, repeatedly torture has been proven to really not get you the information that you're after. And this is like another indication. Him just being like, I would say whatever you want me to say. I just don't know what that is. Tell me and I will say it. Like, it's just, this is so, this after just getting like beaten up by the randoms in this bar earlier, bruh has had such a bad day. I really feel for him. So eventually the guys like reveal enough in front of him. The shipment he unpacked is not what was sent from Baraputra's laboratory. Terrence had pulled a switch. It could be anywhere. We were so close to wrapping up the case. It has to be Athos. It may still be Athos, a plan within a plan. The late Dr. Jahar did too good a job. Terrence is everything JR promised except loyal. You sure that wasn't just a speck of dirt in that circuit board? It wasn't dirt. But that's sure as hell not any agent of Terrence C's. Think he had any use as a stalking goat? If only he were an agent, it would be worth a try. Since he evidently isn't, he has no value at all. My God, have we been at this for 7 hours? It's too late now to blank him and turn him loose. Have Akita take him out and arrange an accident. So, Akita takes him out, gets Ethan super drunk, and lets it sink in so that the bruh is like all over the place. He is trying to call for help, but nobody like that he passes believes that he's anything other than just drunk. So he's like pleading for help and they're just laughing because they think that he is just fucked up out of his mind and doesn't know what he's saying, which is like a truly nightmare sort of scenario. You know, the idea that you are surrounded by people and they can see you and can hear you, and yet they do nothing to help you because they do not understand. Oh my God, that is horrifying. Um, and he thinks about like trying to bribe them and then is just like, no, you know what? Fuck you. I'm not doing that. Um, Bomb the rep centers, banks of helpless babies crashing down, flames shooting up to boil away their gentle waterbeds. He shuddered and shivered and moaned, but could not drive his half-paralyzed muscles to his straining will. Vile, inhuman plans, so reasonably discussed, so casually dispatched, all insane here. So he grabs him, this guy Okita, by the scruff of his neck. Why are you doing this to me? Squeaked Ethan in a last desperate attempt to communicate. Orders, grunted the dense man with finality. Ethan stared into the bored, flat eyes and gave himself up for murdered for the crime of being innocent. Bracing Ethan's arching body against the railing with his knees, he raised doubled fists for a powerful blow. The catwalk shook, a rattling jar. The panting figure raising the stunner in both hands did not pause to cry warning, but simply fired. She seemed to have dropped out of the sky. The shock of the stunner nimbus scarcely made any difference in Ethan's inventory of discomforter. Discomforter. But Okita was caught square on, and followed the momentum of his aimed blow over the railing. His legs, picking up speed, tilted up and slid past Ethan's nose like a ship sinking bow first. "Aw, shit!" yelled Commander Quinn, and bounded forward. The stunner clattered across the catwalk and spun over the side to whistle through the air and burst to sizzling shards far below. Her clutching swipe was just too late to connect with Okita's trouser leg. Blood winked from her torn fingernail. Okita followed the stunner head first. "Gee, I really feel bad about that," she remarked, licking her bleeding finger. "I've never killed a man by accident before. Unprofessional." Oh my God. I just love it. I just love it. She's just, you girl, this bitch is a pro, huh? I love this so much. Unprofessional. How irritated she is with herself. That is so funny. So she is like shockingly, and when I say shockingly, I mean it's shocking to me, not that it's like really shocking to anybody, because we know from reading Miles's books how a lot of people operate. But the way that she behaves when it's like, "Oh, thanks for putting that fucking thing in my, so that they thought that I was," she's just like, "Oh yeah, sorry about that." And she's just really, I don't feel, behaving as guilty as she should for what she did to this poor man. He has been put through it, girl. Like, you do not get it. And the way that she's so casual about it, I was just like, dude, if I were you, I would be very, very pissed right now. And he is like upset, but not to the level that it may just be that he is so sort of disabled at the moment with everything that's in his system that he can't get it together to be as irate as he should be. Um, so let's see. I wouldn't get too misty eyed over that creep. Quite aside from what he almost did to you just now, he helped kill 11 people on Jackson's Hole 5 months ago just to cover up the secret I'm trying to find out. So he asks who she is and why she's following. She explains herself. I'm following Gem Colonel Louis Millisor and the so charming Captain Rao and their two goons. One goon. Millisor is interested in you, therefore I am too. QED. Quinn excites dismay. Is this some kind of joke, guys? I don't know what the QED is supposed to mean. The way that it's said, I felt like I was supposed to kind of be like, haha, like, I see what you're doing. But, like, I'm going to be honest, I do not see what she's doing and don't get it. And I am just really, like, feeling like I missed something there. Um, so let's see. Oh yeah, he's like, well, maybe we should go to the cops. And she's like, no, they wouldn't be able to protect you. Plus, it would blow my cover. Everybody thinks that I'm on leave, and I'm clearly not. Plus, I have a lot of friends and relatives around here, so I just don't want anybody to know that I'm around. What are you going to do with me? She planted her hands on her hips and frowned thoughtfully down upon him. Not sure yet. Don't know if you're an ace or a joker. I think I'll keep you up my sleeve for a while until I can figure out how best to play you. With your permission, she added in palpable afterthought. Yeah, I just, I enjoy her very much as a character, but I really felt for him being in the hands of somebody who just seems to be so chill about what he is going through. This bruh is not ready for any of this. He doesn't need it. He was already so nervous anyway, and then put all this on top of it. Oh my God. Um, we could just leave him here, but I fancy giving Colonel Millisor a mystery of his own to solve. I'm tired of being on the damn defensive, lying low, always one move behind. So they talk about how to get rid of a body on a space station because there's so many cameras and so many things that are monitored. Um, and she's like, I mean, everything gets checked too because of like the ecology police, basically. Uh, as long as I'm going to commit a crime, let it be a perfect one. Anything worth doing is worth doing well, as Admiral Naismith would say. I am really hoping that we get to see Miles in this book at some point. I'm guessing it wouldn't be until like the very end, but I'd be super curious what he makes of Ethan. Um, so poor Ethan at this point just blurts out, I want to go home. Now, that's no way to be just when my case is showing signs of cracking open at last. You just need a good meal and about a week in a hospital bed. Afraid I shan't be able to supply that, but as soon as I finish cleaning up here, I will take you to a place you can rest a bit while I get the next phase started, all right? She manages to just like find him a spot that he can like burrow into and gives him a candy bar, and that's all he gets. And you guys, this just sucks. It just sucks. I hate this so much. She puts his body into this like shipping canister. Um, and tells him that there's like you can't use the plumbing in here because they will notice because they monitor stuff. So if you have to go to the bathroom, you'll have to go in the canister that the body is in. Ethan says, in my opinion, understandably, I would rather die. Oh my god, this is so grim. Jeff says QED is smart people talk for it follows naturally. Like sort of like ipso facto. I see. I have never heard it before. Um so he says something about how they're talking about bombing Athos reproduction clinics, and she's like, interesting, I haven't heard that one before. I really wish I'd been there for the interrogation. Um, and she says, all you missed was a lot of screaming. Yeah, I'm afraid I didn't think they'd need to use anything but fast penta. And like, this is the closest that we get to her feeling guilty, and it's not even quite guilt, it's just being embarrassed. It's like a professional, I misjudged the situation and that's on me, but not like she feels any personal culpability for how he is doing and what he has been through. um so let's see, she says, Gem Colonel Leist Milisor is a Cetigandan counterintelligence officer. Captain Rao and Okita and another Brawn by the name of Seti are his team. Um, Apparently on Cetaganda there was a long-range military-sponsored genetics project until about 3 years ago. Milisor was the security chief, and the security was tight. In 25 years, no one had been able to find out what they were up to beyond the fact that it seemed to be the one-man show of a certain Dr. Faz Jahar, a moderately bright Cetagandan geneticist who vanished from view about the time it started. And I don't know if this is something linked to the previous book, but at first my thought was that it was going to be something to do with like the creation of the other, the distribution of the keys in the genome. But all of the way that this is all described and who is involved, I don't think it is. Um, the laboratory blew up one night, taking Jahar with it, and Milisor and his merry men have been chasing something around the galaxy ever since, blowing people away with the careless abandon of either homicidal lunatics or men scared out of their wits. While I'm not sure I'd vouch for Captain Rao, Gem Colonel Milisor does not strike me as a madman. I can't, like, I have to assume that the egg, like, no, that doesn't make sense. I'm trying to imagine what could have happened because, like, Athos was trying to buy eggs. They got a lot of, like, non-human ones, and all of them dead as well. And I don't know if this was to just replace, like, as close to what they thought they were purchasing, or if it was to replace what the item was actually, like, what it was that was being smuggled. Like, because my instinct is that whatever it is that was being smuggled was probably genetic material like eggs. But then I was sort of like, well, I don't know that at all. It could be something totally unrelated. But the fact that it is a genetic project, it would make sense. I don't know. Um, so they go into their little like hiding place, and like I said, can't use the plumbing in here. um she had grounded the pallet and was piling up some cushions. No blankets. I gotta keep my jacket, but if you sort of burrow in here you should be warm enough. It was like falling into a bank of clouds. Burrow, Ethan whispered. Warm. And here's a candy bar to tide you over. He snatched it. He couldn't help himself. One other thing. You can't use the plumbing. I know this sounds terrible, but if you've got to go, use the canister. I'd rather die, said Ethan distinctly around a mouthful of nuts and goo. The temptation to make a joke here, you guys, is almost overwhelming, but I am resisting it. I want it on the record. I didn't do it. So finally, now, phase 2 of the search for the LX-10 Terran C. The what? That was the code name of Milisor's research project, Terran C for short. Maybe some part of whatever they're working on originated on Earth. But Terrence C is a man, said Ethan. They kept asking me if I was here to meet him. Oh, how strange. How very strange. I never knew that. Her eyes were bright as mirrors. Then she was gone. And that is the end of the chapter. Ethan, you deserved better than this. You really did. You may be a little weirdo, and your whole planet may have been founded and peopled by fucking madmen, but you're a good dude. And I hope that you don't go through another torture. I'll keep my expectations for you reasonable and be like, I just hope that you don't get tortured again. How's that? All right. I have to wrap this one up, but thank you all so much. I appreciate you all. I really am enjoying these books. And this is such a surprise, this one, in so many ways. So until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.